Welcome to another OCD Recovery Instagram Live. I'm going to be talking today about why the OCD recovery journey is not as easy as it is often made out, in relation to one of my latest posts on Twitter talking about how difficult the journey actually is, so that people don't feel disheartened when they are struggling and they find it difficult. It's been years and so on. There is a reason, a very valid reason. Now, that reason is that if I went on Google right now, and let's imagine I was at the beginning of this journey and I was stuck with OCD and I wanted to get better. And I went online and I started looking up about OCD recovery. Not OCD recovery, I started looking for help with my OCD. 90% of what I would be hearing would be about learning to leave thoughts there, learning to change my relationship with thoughts, learning to refocus. Now that is a key part of the OCD recovery journey. Let's not get that wrong. That is a key part of the OCD recovery journey, but by no means all, because to get under it, you need to break down those irrational fears. That means getting into the content of the thought, right? Now, one of the biggest myths, and you see it all the time about OCD, is that the content is irrelevant. Yes, the content is irrelevant by definition, okay? Content has no relevance to you. However, when a thought, something has been latched for so long, let's imagine false memory real event OCD has been latched for years, okay? It's been latched for years in the background. It doesn't release like people think it releases, okay? Doesn't release like that. How do I know? Because I lived that life for years, where it was permanently sort of just locked on like that, hooked in the background, just subtly in the background, locked with either chronic guilt or chronic anxiety for years. Just like that, locked in the background over and over and over and over and over and over in the background for years and years and years. Now, why does it do that? Well, because you still believe on some level that that thought or that thing is real and terrifying and scary and is never going to release and you're going to be stuck forever, okay? That's why. It's because either there's fear of fear or something you believe really happened or some disease or something or whatever, and you're scared of that. You are scared of that under the surface. You are. So anyone who says you don't go into the thought is absolutely wrong. Absolutely wrong. I've been saying it for years. You do go into the thought. How do we know this? Well, if it wasn't true, we wouldn't use exposures for OCD. So we do use exposures for OCD, targeted exposures for OCD fears. Those are used. You use targeted exposures for OCD. So that demonstrates we go into thought. So when people say you don't, it then leaves OCD sufferers stuck because they're like, hey, I've been told the content's relevant. I never need to go into the thought. But why are we doing exposures then? Because we do when they're very sticky and they've been locked on for years and years and years and not releasing, we need to go into them, okay? So that is crucial. Now, when I'm saying OCD recovery is harder than it is often made out to be, the reason being it's very easy for somebody to say, just leave thoughts there, no, change your relationship with thoughts. That doesn't take an expert in the subject of OCD to say that. People can easily say that, and you'll find countless accounts on YouTube and social media saying, just be free from OCD, it's just leave the thoughts, be free from OCD in 5 days, whatever. Countless books on it. It's not as simplistic as that. Then the person feels alone and like they're stuck forever. But it's not as simplistic as that. Because if it was, people would just pick up a Claire Weekes book, one of the great anxiety pioneers and a fundamental book on my reading list, like Self-Help for Your Nerves. And they would then, with that book, they would just be better, and most people would be better. But it doesn't work like that. Then they feel lost and alone. So it's very important to realize that it isn't as easy to recover from OCD as it is made out, okay? OCD recovery can sometimes, a lot of people, especially with more subtle OCD, more sort of light, milder OCD, a few months, just gone, like pretty much back to normal, never really causing a problem again. OCD in general in the chronic format isn't as simplistic as that. The person needs to have a good understanding of the main principles outlined by Albert Ellis, who was the founder of CBT with Aaron Beck, who formed rational motive behavior therapy that then became cognitive behavior therapy, became a form of that then became into the cognitive behavior therapy. And the main principles were unconditional self, unconditional life acceptance. Those were key points for recovery. And they were fundamental to anxiety disorders because the person was always conditionally accepting themselves. If I do this, I'm a good person, then I can accept myself. If I do that, I'm a bad person, I can't accept myself. That cycle was just going on and on and on and on and on in circles. Okay, so it's very, very important to understand those principles, as well as the principles by the likes of Claire Weeks in the book Self-Help for Your Nerves, understanding that it's the sensations and fear of fear that's going on in us that's keeping the nervous system sort of jacked up. So that's key as well. That's a very key point too, because it's both of those combination. Now, why is it so important to highlight that OCD recovery is more difficult than people think? Well, the reason it's so important to highlight that OCD recovery is more difficult than people think is otherwise people feel lost, disheartened, and very depressed because they think my brain's broken, I'm a different case, things couldn't be any worse, this is the worst that things can, I must be some unique situation, I'm treatment resistant, And we know that's not the case. I can show you countless examples where that isn't. If you just go through this page, look at various people I've worked with that have come in thinking they were treatment resistant, people have had brain surgeries, deep brain stimulation in all parts of the world, and didn't get better, and then they went through all of this and understood about their fears and did get better. So, I've spent over a decade working with people with OCD and with the most sort of severely affecting their life quality by OCD and so on. It's nothing to do with that they're any different to the other in terms of like they've got some treatment resistant form. I've never seen treatment resistant OCD, I've never seen it. But what I have seen is just people with very strong irrational beliefs that fuel the cycle. Until they learn to get under those, they keep the cycle going round and round and round and round and round. It's like, think of OCD recovery as it's a marathon, not a sprint. If you try and sprint a marathon, you never get there, right? You never get there. You're gonna burn out. You're gonna burn out. It's like anything. It's like if you are saving, you're not going to save all the money instantly. Actually, in relation to that, in the background there is a Coca-Cola bowl. I've had that for about 10 years. I used to put just loose change in the house in it and give it to charity. And then one point I just it got very, very full up. And then I kept looking at it thinking, when's it going to ever get to top? But it never did, because obviously that needs quite a lot of coins, because that's quite a large Coca-Cola bottle. It's about a meter long. And when I did that, I always used to think, I didn't really think about it much, but I used to think, well, how long is that going to take? How long is that going to take to get up? And I mean, originally it started as a savings jar. Then I thought I'll give it to charity, and then I did charity, just donations with it. And then I thought to myself, would it be like then I started putting notes in it instead of coins, and all sorts of things went on with that charity thing, just like a loose change jar in your house. And the reason I was relating to that is, would it have been if I just suddenly filled it up right now, right to the top with everything, with kind of defeated the purpose, because it was when I was doing it bit by bit, I was sort of seeing the amount of time that it takes to build up that jar. And that's a bit like in the sense with OCD recovery, you've got to put in little bits of work. It wasn't the best analogy, I went a bit off topic with it, but OCD recovery is something you've got to put in little bits each day, little bits, and it builds up. Otherwise, if you do it, if you try and do it in one go, really fast and like suddenly like that, it doesn't work. That definitely didn't work with that analogy. I went off topic, but the problem that you have is people try and rush OCD, the recovery. They come into me all the time and say, Rob, can I have some tips and tricks to recover from OCD? I want to recover right now. I really need some tips and tricks. And they get completely stuck because they're trying to force it so hard. They want rid of OCD. They want it fixed all right now. They want it completely sorted, and it doesn't work like that. You can't do that. You can't fix something so quickly. You can't force something so quickly, and it's a big problem with that. It's it's like anything. Like, all right, let me use an analogy that does work here. is when I started doing these Instagram lives, they were very, very difficult to do because at first you go like, what do I say? What do I not say? And stuff like that. And so I never ever written down bullet points, as you can tell by that Analogies went wrong. And you can tell by with bullet points, it's you then start to read it sort of scripted, and it becomes a problem. You start to get too scripted with things. So I always just did them completely, just picked up my phone and spoke. And that was a good learning experience because it really it helps you to flow with it much better. But at first it was a disaster because I couldn't do it like that. It was difficult. I kept getting lost. I kept forgetting what I was saying. I kept forgetting what I was thinking. And it was very, very tricky, especially with something like OCD. It's a very tricky topic to discuss on the spot because it requires quite a lot of thinking and quite a lot of perspective on it. It's like you when you're trying to think about OCD things, it is tricky. It's not, if I'm speaking about very simplistic things that I speak about all the time, that's all right, because you know those are kind of like a habit. Like most of the things we do are habits. You get up, brush your teeth, go and make yourself breakfast. That's just a habit. You've done it every time. But when you're doing things that you're having to require a lot of thinking or talking about tricky subjects that are hard to make relate. I mean, OCD is something that you can't see, so it's hard for people to relate to it. So you're having to constantly come up with analogies and things like that to help people to understand. And it's not easy. It's difficult. Like, I'll give you an example of one that's pretty difficult. Is like it's quite difficult when people come in with sensory motor OCD and they're scared of being locked onto a sensation forever because they haven't got an immediate exposure that they can do to face that fear and confront it. And because they haven't got that, they get very stuck and very scared that they're like locked in their head forever. And then they're like, well, what do I do? How do I change my relationship with those thoughts? It's quite difficult. So you have to come up with analogy. Basically, all this stuff that we do, all sort of talking based things to help people with OCD is like surgery in terms of your thoughts, in terms of your thinking. It's sort of coming up with ideas that change people's perception, that releases that fear. So you're having to create various analogies that can change someone's perspective of how they're viewing a situation. When I did the video yesterday talking about how anxiety is like a reflex that's like locks up and then it gets locked and then it doesn't release, what's happening there is people get very, very stuck with thinking of acceptance as a doing, like a thing they need to fix, a thing they need to do, a thing they need to get rid of, and it becomes a disaster. And I think that's very important that people realize that, because if they don't, they're constantly trying to force, constantly trying to do, constantly trying to get rid of OCD, and it becomes a complete nightmare. And that's why I didn't ever like those refocus, relabel models, which I thought was complete nonsense, because, well, yes, all right, you do need to refocus and relabel to some degree, then the person becomes obsessed with that, and then it won't release if the person's scared 0.001% risk. It still latches and it doesn't release, and it becomes a nightmare. So I think with everything that you're doing with OCD, you need to view it as a marathon. You need to take it one day at a time. You're not going to get it overnight. You're not going to meet any therapist, anyone in the world that you'll be able to go in one session and walk out the other door and feel better. You're not going to go in and do a CBT 6-session thing with chronic OCD and be better straight away. It doesn't happen. NHS run that CBT model because it can roll out to a lot of people because they're dealing with a huge number of people. But 6 sessions might give you an improved knowledge of helping you start with OCD, but it's not going to get under it. You could never get under OCD in 6 sessions. It's not going to be possible to do that. It just won't be possible to achieve that. So yeah, you need to view it as a more long-term thing. People are always too focused on the short-term fix. Naturally, they're focused on short-term fix because it feels like shit. And because it feels like shit, they're focused on trying to have it all got rid of in a very, very short period. Now, other things that I wanted to talk about in relation to the journey. You're going to have to do a lot of work. You're not going to do this by getting away by doing very little work. That's not going to happen. You're going to have to do a lot of work. That's going to involve a lot of reading. It's going to involve a lot of exposures. It's going to involve disputing beliefs. You've got to do that. How many people come into me and never read the books? Majority. People come into me, they sign up to do 10 sessions with me, they are really committed in the beginning and they go away and they never read. Or they start reading 6 sessions in. That is not the way to do it. You want to read that book list and you want to go through that and get it all covered. It's vital. Trying to recover without an understanding of Albert Ellis's teachings or any understanding of Claire Weeks, all the stuff that Claire Weeks did in relation to anxiety, very difficult. I can't even see it as being possible. I can't see it as being possible. Because until you can see that your thinking is responsible for how your emotional state is, it just stays latched, it just stays locked. And that's what it does. It does that. It gets a grip and it keeps on in there. If it released just by leaving it, everyone would be better. Think about it. If it released as easily as it's always spoken about doing, it would just be better. People would just be better straight away. And it isn't. It doesn't release like that. It doesn't just release. It doesn't just release in that situation like that. It doesn't do that. Otherwise, everyone would be feeling better and everyone would be saying, "Oh, OCD recovery is easy. You just leave it there and do nothing, and then I got better." But people have left it there and done nothing for years. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that at all. I know because I spent years doing that. Put all my effort into those books saying relabel, refocus, all my effort into meditation, all my effort into yoga, and I left it and I didn't put effort as well and left it as well and spent times where I wasn't fighting for years. All of the things that could be said from both angles. No, it's a helpful addition, but it doesn't get under it. Right, let's have a look at some of these questions. In relation to the question for POCD exposures, we need to target those specifically, as that's a specific theme that involves getting under those fears. We need to do that. It's quite a specific fear which requires various exercises to help with that. We cover that in the one-to-one and group coaching. It's difficult to do on Instagram Live because of the nature of that subject. It could easily be without speaking to the individual and seeing exactly why they're scared of it. It needs to be tailored, and it's tricky to do that otherwise. Let's have a look here. Rob, you need to get a phone holder. Absolutely true. My neck is completely fucked from holding phones. I definitely do need to get a phone holder. I'm very, very aware of that. And I did have a phone holder, but I can't remember where it is. I set up a studio to start doing these podcasts, and I set up a pretty good studio for that. It's all set up with really good stuff in there for doing that, because I really wanted to get myself into it. And one day I got a bit carried away. I was like, right, I've got to do these podcasts, get really onto this. So I'd set up this whole studio. But I can't remember where the phone holder's gone. I need to get another one. I'm going to be doing podcasts soon. I've got a sound engineer that's helped me do all the studio for that, which has got which will make some very good quality podcasts, I hope. And that will be one of the next things I'm doing. I like the Instagram Live format though, because the way it works, I've been used to it for a long time, and the way the commenting works and so on. So yeah, I like that. I'll be doing both. I'm not going to just do podcasts. I think for OCD, the different formats benefit recovery journeys of people in different ways. You see different benefit from everything. The one-to-one coaching I do is very specific to the individual. Group coaching, less specific, but then it's got a good sort of fun atmosphere because of all the sort of camaraderie amongst everyone, and you see all the different people's journeys. So that's good in its own way. You've got all the different parts of these things have their own benefits in different ways. But I think the podcast's the next thing to add. The YouTube channel, we've been putting a lot of focus in, some great guys on there that have been putting out lots of videos, which I hope you guys like. So we'll be doing a lot more of that. We're trying to aim to build that into sort of hub for OCD, one of the main hubs for sort of OCD information. And those are all free resources, because OCD has got such terrible free resources a lot of the time out there, that we want to make sure there's loads of free resources for people that can't come into the one-to-one and group coaching, so they have access to that. How's your back, Rob? Need to go to the physio. I need to go to physio. It's not predominantly just working on this phone. It's the whole sort of lockdown / curfew type situations that have been going on over the last for everyone over the last few months. So you're not moving around as actively as before, and I've got herniated discs in my back, so sort of sitting down all the time and not moving around as much isn't ideal. But it ain't that bad either when you look at it in the big perspective of things, like Albert Ellis says. Okay, let's have a look here. Yes, there is not much content on trans OCD. We actually had a group. Call on trans OCD last night, which was very good. It's pretty common, trans OCD today. It's just not that covered that much, but it's the same. It's just a thought, and it just feels very, very real. Should do live podcasts sometimes on Twitch. Just learnt what Twitch was about a week ago. As you know, I've, as they say in the groups, I'm a bit of a dinosaur, a bit out of touch with a lot of the words. I learnt what Karen was about 3 weeks ago. Didn't know what that was. But it's like all these different words. They're not even these different words. These different platforms is what's changing everything. Now with these different platforms, we can reach so many people where we couldn't before. If you'd lived with OCD 30, 40 years ago, it would have been very hard to get any help for anything, because no one would have known what OCD was. If you told someone you'd got OCD, you'd probably been thought of as a witch or have a demon in you, and that wouldn't have gone down too well. So you think of now all these platforms, it's so much better. Like, that's one of the reasons why I haven't been so fast with writing the book, because writing the book is, it's always been a sort of a way to reach a lot of people for passing on information. But with all the new formats that we have today, like social media is like the books of today, because you can reach so many people so quickly. So, it's been a lot faster for us in terms of getting information to people. So yeah, I will look at all these different things for helping things. Which celebrity would you want on your podcast? I don't know if that's... I would probably, I'd have to answer that question in relation to people that were dead. If I could technically have anyone, you'd obviously want the likes of Claire Weeks, Albert Ellis, and so on, and then interview people from the past that had OCD in history, the Howard Hughes and so on. I always think that. I always think, it would have been great to have worked with Howard Hughes. I mean, I know that if I could have worked with Howard Hughes just for a few days, it would have completely changed his life. I'm not saying that from a position of, I'm so great, I can do that. It's not from a position of that at all. It's from a position of, Howard Hughes, I always think, is such a tragedy. Like, the guy he was one of the wealthiest men in the world. He had one of the greatest lives. He was aviation inspiration. He was an incredible character, and he was stuck with OCD his whole life. Completely, if you watch the Leonardo DiCaprio film The Aviator by Martin Scorsese, I mean, his life was a disaster because of OCD, and it was contamination OCD, which is so treatable with exposures. It's so effective with exposures to get in there, and he just didn't have that knowledge, and he left all his money. Not obviously to imagine, he'd left it all to OCD charities and so on, transformed OCD. I mean, a guy would have made a huge difference. I mean, a lot of it was left to medical and research. I mean, it's obviously done a huge amount of good, absolutely has, but it could have been more focused towards OCD, but some portion of it for sure. I always think, those kind of things, going back, like, even if you had a conversation with someone in the Middle Ages who had OCD their whole life, 5 minutes, it would have changed their whole life, just to be able to say this. Yeah, that thing you've got's called OCD. It's your relationship with the thoughts. You're not alone. Loads of people have it. Just that sentence, bang, whole person's life transformed like that. You imagine somebody thinks they're a witch and gets burnt at the stake. They confess to their mum, I think I'm a witch. Burn. I mean, then they had OCD. Of course OCD is going to make them think they're a witch. Of course OCD is going to make them feel blasphemous, and they've made that they've said something bad against God, or things like that. That's what it was. It was all blasphemy. I mean, I have so many people coming to me in relation to blasphemy OCD in parts of the world where it's very, very religious. You see that all the time. And it depends on the content. Now, like, POCD is one of the main topics because of sort of newspapers and social media that sort of really hates all of that. So people will think, oh my God, I hope I'm not that. Whereas in the Middle Ages, I doubt that would have been a major theme. So yeah, those kind of things. Yeah, so those would have been people that I would have really liked to have had or had chance to speak to, for sure. Let's have a look here. Book list. Momin will post it. Momin will post it. Momin works in OCD recovery in the company, and he will post that list. He usually does in these comments, or he will post it on social media, or if you just put it as a question in the Facebook groups or anything. New website's going live in the next few days. It has all the book list, breakdown of everything, all about OCD and so on. It's very in detail, all about OCD. So you will find all the stuff that you need on there. I just haven't got around to putting it as we're doing the website launch. What if you feel you should be punished for something you did in the past? Even if you accept yourself unconditional, shouldn't you still be punished? Well, no, because unconditional acceptance is the opposite of punishment. If you accept yourself and have made peace, why are you going to punish yourself? Doesn't make any sense at all. Punishment's just a social construct that we punish people, for wrongdoing. It's like almost like a godlike sort of demand. It's not reality. There's no need to. I mean, like, how much are you punishing yourself right now for shouting at your mum when you were 8? All right, someone can have OCD about that, but usually you're not. It's locked onto specific things that you're scared that you can't release it on, or you think is much worse than that and the worst thing ever, and so on. But acceptance is the opposite of punishment. Right, neck starting to hurt a little bit now. I'll stand up for a bit. Let's have a look. Does OCD target my fear of abandonment? OCD will target fear of anything. If it knows that you're scared, it's going to target it. Just made a video about trans OCD. Sadie. Yeah, great. Yeah, that'll be going on the YouTube channel. So yeah, trans OCD. Very, very popular topic. That will definitely get covered. Thanks for that, Sadie. I look forward to seeing that. Definitely needs more coverage, that topic. If OCD didn't feel real, it wouldn't be a disorder. It's because you want it to not feel real. You want to know that it's just OCD and that it's not that, and that's why it's gripping. It's because of your need for it not to feel real. That's the, it's good. If it didn't feel real, it wouldn't be a disorder. That's why it is a disorder. Yeah, I would prefer you read the Albert Ellis books in a paper format than audio, just because it doesn't go in. I mean, you can do whatever, it doesn't bother me, but I'm saying from my own experience that if you read them in paper format, it's a lot better, because trying to do them on audio, a lot of people do it, it just doesn't go in that well. You need to sort of see it, highlight things, underline things to help you. It works out a lot better. When is the next Instagram live? Every few days I try and do them, unless I'm really, really busy and put them off for a while. But usually I try and do them every few days. I need to get on here and do a lot more. I want to do a lot longer ones as well. Often it's between calls and I don't have time to do them, but definitely come on here and do them a lot more. And with the podcast, it'll be a lot like that. I'm not exactly going to do 5-minute podcast. I don't think that would do very well. Just reading through these questions. What would I do without Momin helping out with all these questions? Remember when I used to do all these Instagram lives without Sophia and Momin on here helping? It was difficult because sometimes a lot of questions come in. Look, I do these Instagram lives sort of sporadically in the middle of the day. And a lot of people at work, but a lot of people at home now because of quarantine. But if I will do them at organised times for those of you that miss them. But I mean, also doing them like this is then there's not so many people on the live. If there was sort of over 100 where it would be like that when if I did them at organised times, the questions come in so fast, responding to them is very difficult. And so often this format works out better. Can't cover all the questions. I just cover sort of the main ones because a lot of them are broad, like how do you recover from OCD in general, what is OCD recovery and so on. So I try and cover those in the YouTube video specifically. I plan to cover every topic on OCD. Don't like to really leave any topics out. So yeah, try and get every topic done. Really, that's the plan. Let's have a look here. There is no cure for OCD. It requires behaviour and cognitive changes. Acceptance and uncertainty are key here. That's right, Bo. Absolutely spot on. That is right. Get better soon from COVID, Bo. I know that you've got COVID at the moment. I mean, that's very difficult for people with OCD. They're very scared. What happens if I get pneumonia? What if I end up in a hospital and have problems with my lungs? What if, all these things. OCD does that. I mean, COVID, flu-related OCD and going to pneumonia is super common. People are, oh my God, if I've got a flu and then it goes to pneumonia, that will be the worst. I won't be able to accept that. If I had to go on a drip, I used to have that all the time. Terrible fear of being on drips. You used to think like, oh my God, if I'm on a drip, then I'm much closer to death. So if one thing goes wrong, I'm dead. That used to get me on health OCD all the time. I used to feel so stuck with that one. It used to be a nightmare. Thank you for all the nice comments about the Instagram live and so on. Let's have a look. Don't always get nice comments. Get a lot of people taking the piss as well for fun. Usually people from the groups. How many years have I been on Instagram? I think it's about 3 years. It's not that long. I was involved with OCD for a very long time before that, but I thought that social media was one of the best resources to get involved for changing the way OCD was done. So that's why I came onto it very reluctantly at first. I was kind of anti all this stuff myself. I didn't really care about being online and people seeing what I'm doing. Never really interested in that. But then I thought this is the best way to reach people with OCD. And it was just sort of a comfortable format that you can do in terms of, not from a comfort trap point of view, but from a point of view that, you can, I saw that with the way things were going, I could then, all the thoughts and all the things I had about OCD, I could jot them down throughout the day all the time, make them go live, and then it would be helping people instantly. Instead of a book, you're waiting sort of every 6 months to a year to release it. It's a much better format. So yeah, that's why I did it that way. Does keeping busy help with OCD thoughts? Yeah, keeping busy does help with OCD thoughts, but if it becomes too much of a distraction, it becomes like compulsion, you're always trying to run away from it, then it becomes an issue. I used to have a big problem with that. I used to distract myself all the time. Well, that was because I read this absolutely crap website when I was trying to recover from OCD, and it just basically gave me terrible advice. Just saying things like, yeah, keep yourself distracted all the time. Let's see if I can put this phone in this cupboard and then my back won't hurt so much. Propped up between a box of Quality Street. 1 second. This should do. There we go. Yeah, that is good. Oh, that's so much better. So where was that question that I was answering? I've completely forgotten what I was saying. Ah, yes. I like different just websites. Like in the past, I went on a website maybe, how long ago now? Maybe about 12, 13 years ago. Yeah, longer than that. Maybe 14 years ago. That was basically talking about just distract yourself the whole time. Keep yourself distracted and then you'll get better. And so I was in a position where I was thinking, right, I've just got to keep myself distracted all the time forever. And it was talking about taking up new hobbies and all different things to distract yourself, and then you'd recover. And so I was just constantly doing stuff all the time and was terrified to not be doing stuff, because then the thoughts would come in, which is disastrous for OCD, because you're just in a cycle of basically running away from it the whole time. And I was in a cycle of running away from it all the time. And then when it came in, I thought, oh my God, I'm not doing it right. It's all going wrong. But, that was the times when people used to, well, they still do, but I mean, people used to just Google sort of like quick fixes for OCD. And there used to be all these kind of just basically just the weird coaching, not coaching, but like weird just weird ebooks of, you get that. You've always got those kind of just really get sort of just dodgy sites that have no real, I don't know how to explain it, like, because in some way they're good, like the things they do, there are some of the messages are good, so I don't want to go. And with anxiety, used to be these like real veterans of anxiety. I used to feel bad because I used to think like, I used to slate those places and say like, oh my God, that's terrible. They get you in, and it's almost like just a scam, because they're just a sort of quick fix for anxiety, distracting yourself, ebook with a long page of red text. This is how it used to be 10 years ago, just a long page of red text, down, buy an ebook. And it was basically, you bought an ebook that was just not giving you many tools apart from like distraction and so on. Now, I used to slate those because I was really annoyed. I hadn't got better, and used to be, it's a scam, they're terrible, and watch out for those, which is true. But the reason I don't like to go completely into its nonsense is because a lot of those principles, as I saw in those forums over the years, were sort of the Claire Weeks book of learning to leave your thoughts there, learning to not get into the whole fight with them that she laid out, and distraction and so on, because distraction is important. There's a good video on it by Aaron Beck on YouTube talking about the benefits of distraction in the short term but not in the long term. So those are great principles. So I don't like to come down too hard on those things, because otherwise people come into me that have done those things 10 years ago, and they're like, well, distraction was very helpful. And if I say like, oh, that was complete garbage, they're a scam, that site, and so on, which the way that a lot of those places operate is in a lot of ways, the problem is that you have a situation where that person's learnt so many helpful tools for so long that have been really helpful for their life, that if you say that, then they're going to lose hope in those which have been very helpful for them. And I don't think that's true. I think distraction is very, very helpful in the short term, and it has its sort of little bits of long term help in terms of if you just sit there focusing on your OCD, you're not get better. So you have to distract yourself in day-to-day life enough just to go about, but not trying to run away from it. So I don't like to sort of completely say it's garbage, but I mean, it's not great. I definitely do not recommend those, but a lot of the stuff that is taught still has important principles in there, because I know that so many people, especially older people now, have used those kinds of sites in the past and bought those kinds of ebooks. And so I don't want to just sort of rubbish it all. The content does have its theory that works in the short term, but is not going to bring about long-term OCD recovery. I have spoken about this quite a lot on Instagram Lives, talking about this, and deadlines. You see a lot of social media people working with OCD and stuff saying deadlines, like if you're not better by X amount of date, you're never going to, this is a deadline, you've got to get better. And even a lot of medical systems around the world have that, like an intensive certain number of sessions, then you're out. The person feels lost, hopeless, alone, because they think, well, how the hell's this happened? I must be treatment resistant to have gone through all of this and still be stuck. This is absolutely ridiculous. And so then they feel so lost. And that's exactly the same with all those things. There's deadlines. I've had so many places, I've said anywhere that's saying do X amount of exposures in X amount of time and you'll be recovered is nonsense. You can't set a deadline. Anxiety will increase as you come up to the deadline because it knows it's coming up. So it's going to do that. Responsibility, Megan's question. I think Kirsty did a video on our YouTube channel about that. So check that out. I think she did that the last couple of days. Sorry to hear about your dad passing away, Radette. Sorry to hear about that. I'll tell you another thing about OCD. Years ago, I used to own a gym, and we used to sometimes have the different TV things that used to come in, different TV shows that want to rent the space off me and film things on fitness and so on. I used to always be so nervous at doing those because I had this OCD where whenever I was on camera, I used to have like intrusive words or intrusive thoughts so that I couldn't concentrate, like trying to destroy my concentration. And I always thought that if I like when I was stuck, I always used to think when I used to read about people recovering, thinking, how the hell can somebody then go on to speaking about this? Because wouldn't it like still try and attack them? Because I never really believed sort of sensory motor or like intrusive words you could have really properly escaped from. I used to think like the brain would always send that, but what I didn't realize is because I was scared of it. And I would have never ever believed that I would be doing like all this stuff that I'm doing today when I was stuck. I would have thought I would just literally be sabotaged by my mind all the time. That's basically what it felt like. There's no hardest theme to recover. Some are more tricky in sort of in essence, but they're different for different people. I know people that have recovered from POCD that our OCD bothers them and vice versa. So, our OCD can be very upsetting for someone. Contamination OCD can be very upsetting for someone. POCD tends to be, people find that a bit more challenging, existential, the same. But then any thought that you can't get better from, you say like, that's so hard, it's going to go to that. And that you've got to allow it to go to everything or any thought. People often say to me, how do you do your job, Rob, hearing thoughts all day long and all these scary things? It's like, well, it's because I'm not scared of them or any of this stuff that's happening, so it doesn't have that effect. But otherwise people are trying to run and avoid and think like, oh my god, I've got to get away from this thought, I've got to get away from that thought, because they remember how stuck they were in the past when they got triggered and they couldn't get out of it. It was very much like that in the past, so you get very scared of it. I know, because that was my exact journey. Quality Street. See, that's a judgment there about Christmas. You can have Quality Street any time of the year. It's the same as food. Like, we go into a restaurant, people usually say, oh, you've got to have a dessert after the meal. Now, I don't go out and specifically have desserts before the meal, but if you're at home, and sometimes I think, like, why does it matter? Who made up this rule? Have whatever you want when you want. It's complete nonsense. It's only mums that tell you that. You can't have this, you can't have that, but why not? Have it in whatever order you want. Reading through these comments. OCD and tinnitus. Marik's got a good video on that on our YouTube channel. If you go on there and type in tinnitus, you'll find that. That's a very, very popular symptom. Okay, guys. Great to chat to you on here. I'll be back on another Instagram live soon. I'll try and do some more longer Instagram lives like I did today, so covering a lot more of your questions. Again, thanks a lot to Momin for helping out with all the questions. Anything that you want to see, any questions you want to ask, just come on here and put them in the comments below, and we always try and cover those. And we do them frequently enough, these Instagram lives, so that you can regularly get your questions in. Guys, I will see you on the next Instagram live. Take it easy.